Shalom, friends. So, Yosef and I had a short discussion, and Yoav and Chezi and Yosef and I have been having a short discussion about worrying things. Things have been worrying many of us. Good evening, Dawn. Obviously, what happened at Bondi Beach on the first day of Hanukkah. I wish I could say it was surprising. It was a tragedy. Unfortunately, I don't feel like. Hello, Yosef.
Hey.
Shavua Tov. Is it your new microphone yet or not yet?
Not yet. No, I had the part of the
No dissertation, no new microphone.
Dissertation.
And frankly, I more than the other people around here have been a fan of Benjamin Boyce for it's 8 years now almost. And frankly, I thought maybe go ahead and show this video clip. I don't know where the full thing is, but the clip was honestly disturbing. So you will excuse me if I subject you to a almost 4-minute clip.
And those declining birth rates. I'm ingesting this book that I probably shouldn't say the name of. It popped up in my YouTube feed and it caused me nightmares. Actually, it's probably one of the scariest books that I've come across in quite some time. It's called
Culture of Critique by Kevin MacDonald is I can't describe it as anything other than pseudoscience. In the fact that we now it's very much like the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, I would say. Does it have grains of truth in it? Of course. Every piece of propaganda does. What is it shocking that somebody who I think has as much access to he knows Brett Weinstein and Heather Heying individually. Okay, I'll just let the clip play.
A Culture of Critique by Kevin MacDonald. It's a third part of his trilogy, analyzing Judaism from the lens of a evolutionary system that is adaptive, is highly adaptive. And he starts with just that basic thesis, and he goes in and he starts to parse through all the data, the historical data that he has with that subject, because he's just using Judaism as a case example, a case study in
it's been around for a while.
Adaptive cultural matrices. But by the third book, which is Culture of Critique, he basically says that they control everything. He goes into psychoanalysis, Frankfurt School, the media, and history of the 20th century. Says basically I asked Daryl Cooper about this. I'm like, this is really startling stuff, because
he asked Daryl Cooper about this.
On coming up with tons and tons of data Kevin MacDonald does to support his case. I'm like, Daryl Cooper, what do you think about this? Daryl Cooper is he does not shy away from talking about these issues and playing around with ideas around the founding mythos of our age. And I think he's actually much more liberal and much more kind-hearted than his detractors suppose, but he also has deeply studied these issues. So I wanted his input. He's like, well, Kevin MacDonald spoke.
Why he didn't go to Brett Weinstein and Heather Heying?
Because it's too much on this one sub-ethnic group of the Jews called the Ashkenazi Jews. So I'm ingesting this and I'm seeing this pattern, this really startling pattern. And Kevin's saying, this group was suppressed by the West and figured out an adaptive strategy to survive in this hostile environment by subverting the Gentiles, the Western Gentiles, on every front that they could possibly subvert them. And once you see it as an act of subversion, and you can say morally, or not morally, maybe amorally, it's like, this is just an adaptive mechanism so this group can survive, but it's also causing my group harm. It's causing my society to be, you could put the case that Freud led to the sexual revolution. The sexual revolution led to massive declining birth rates, and then those declining birth rates, this declining sense of ethnos, has led to Western countries being swamped by immigrants and not having the collective will to stop that process. So it's just entering into that conversation. And I know it's just it's a trigger, because any kind-hearted liberal Jews that are listening to me or still listening to me can suppose that I am threatening their way of life by bringing this all up. Right. But if we have the conversation and no blame is put around, it's just like, this is how these evolutionary things work.
I would love to have the conversation without assigning blame. But these are dumb ideas.
Then we can start to be.
This is not how evolutionary anything works.
A little bit more honest about where things are headed, and have mutual respect for each other, rather than this hostile, or, as you say, suppressive regime that, for some reason, the Republicans want to make anti-Semitism, whatever that means, illegal in this country.
Make anti-Semitism illegal in this country, whatever that means.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's just true.
Sorry, who is he talking to in this clip?
I have zero idea. Somebody who has a very non-flattering soy jack as their avatar.
Yeah. So, I mean, do we want to just? I think it might be worth discussing cultures. Sorry, of critique for a minute. I mean, we can go for. We have other stuff we want to talk about and say, but.
Well, the reason I played that clip.
Yeah.
Was to show, hey, like, I thought Benjamin Boyce is one of our chevra. I really did. Right? Mm-hmm. He is very close with Brett Weinstein and Heather Heying, at least he was. I know, he was around the PBK old days. Like, we're talking like 8 years ago. And when you have somebody like Benjamin Boyce, he's having nightmares about culture of critique, and his response is to ask Daryl Cooper.
I heard that, and obviously it's not like a great way to validate one's cognitive models, especially like in this area where there's like known issues. Okay, so maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it's worth. I think I want to talk about culture critique for a little bit. At least from the summaries I've read about it, and kind of, different sources on it.
Yosef, for your
for a little bit.
Sound isn't.
Okay, I'll come closer. Okay, I'll do my best. Soon, it's Hashem. I'll have a better microphone soon, and this won't be an issue. You have a worse angle of me, but that's just the way it's going to be. Okay, so my understanding, and people can correct me if I'm wrong, if they've read the book in full. My understanding is that essentially he has three major causes that then lead to like his argument, which are Ashkenazim have high IQ, and that's been like intentionally cultivated as an evolutionary strategy among Ashkenazim. That Jews historically are highly urbanized, and all of the things, the things that later they do to undermine society all come out of these urban centers, and that Jews were very prone to secularization and liked radical movements, universalist movements, because traditional conservative structures just didn't accept them in general society. And then from there, he basically has this Darwinian hypothesis that is that Jews sort of are trying to kind of destroy. They're in competition. Sorry, they're in competition with the rest of with general society or American society. Secular. Maybe secular is the wrong word. But
General Christian society.
General Christian American society. Specifically, he's focusing on America and the West, right? And the Jews are in competition with them. Only one can survive. There's only like this. It's a very zero-sum thing. And everything that Jews do is in order, or not everything Jews do, but Jews, even ones who don't seem to have any Jewish background, even ones who have converted out of Judaism, even ones who have no Jewish education, and even ones who don't particularly affiliate with themselves with Judaism, all are acting in the best interest of Judaism against society in the zero-sum game. And that's his like contention. It would be, for a second, before we like get into the problems with that theory, we'll compare it, let's say, again, based on summaries, because I haven't read it yet, though people have told me to, Darwin's Cathedral. In Darwin's Cathedral, he's, what's his name? Who wrote that? David Wilson, right?
David Sloan Wilson?
Yeah. So he talks about, he also has a Darwinian frame, but it's a very, very different style frame, because he says Jews aren't focused in doing all these things on trying to undermine outside society. They are doing things to increase their own chance of survival within their society. So they're increasing religious cooperation and altruism,
this is within a container of, okay, this is Jewish culture, and people who adhere to Jewish culture actually do these things.
Right, suppressing free riders, like maintaining structures of authority. Right, they do all these things, but so it's a very, they're both Darwinian analyses. One of the biggest differences is that Wilson, when he does his, like actually did a random sampling of 16 different religions and took a spread of points that were selected at random to kind of see if they matched his thesis, and they did. That is like decent scientific method for sociology, at least. He's validating his theory on how groups actually both cooperate and compete to some degrees. For this book, and I know it's volume 3, and I do not know anything about volumes 1 and 2, so we can talk. Maybe someone wants to bring those up, but one, I mean, there's a lot of problems with his theory. One, it's like unfalsifiable, as far as I can tell with McDonald's, because the examples he brings are going to be like Freud, the Frankfurt School, Boas, so like sociology, and what else? Let's see, what else does the summary have for me?
He's not sampling. There's no methodology here. There's no method. It's confirmation bias.
Right. So there's no methodology. He picks a couple examples of things he doesn't like. He completely ignores any influence of Jews on conservative, neoconservative movements in any country, much less the U.S. He's not interested in that, and he doesn't want to deal with that at all. He only wants to deal with kind of the things that are super liberal secular. He doesn't really acknowledge like how much, like that it's not a zero-sum game, and a lot of these Jews are doing a lot of what they're doing because they're assimilated into secular culture. And it was, yes, and to some degree he's right, that conservative Christian hierarchies and societies did not accept Jews, so they did gravitate to fields like psychology that were newer essentially and more open, because they weren't as established or regulated in many ways, right? That's also why they ended up in Hollywood, because they couldn't be in the other parts of various industries.
And newspapers. These were not respectable. These were not respectable.
Right. Either non-respectable or kind of open places socially that allowed them to kind of congregate. His stuff with Boas is particularly weird, and this is like a super side note, but because I know some sociology. Like evidently he has this whole argument that one of the summaries is getting into about like, well, Franz Boas was like trying to like revolutionize sociology. So he brought, he had like 2 Jewish grad students, and like that was like super sus. And then it's like he also had all these non-Jewish grad students, and his ideas aren't particularly Jewish. And he had like, even if you say like 2 seems a lot for him, which I don't think it really is, considering like the type of institution he was at the time, like
the Boas.
Yeah, if non-Jewish professors weren't going to take Jewish students because he was living in a time when there was that type of discrimination, then yeah, the Jewish students are going to end up with a Jewish professor, like more often.
The Boas thing honestly sounds like academic like,
like a-
academic beef he developed over his years in his career.
Yeah, I mean, his five big ones are the Frankfurt School, Boas, Freud, and kind of just general psychoanalysis. Somehow, couldn't find a lot on this part, so maybe I have to read this part of the book. The 1965 Immigration Act, and like specifically how that was a Jewish thing, or like Jews were the primary drivers behind this act. Even, I mean, that would probably require its own separate analysis. I don't know enough about it. And then he just has a general thing about how New York intellectuals weakened European Christian character of the United States. That's kind of his other. It's a much more amorphous thing, and he doesn't. Yeah. So a lot of this, I'll have to read the book to get into much more details on some of these things, but it's pretty clear from a number of them that anytime there is a Jew that does something that he doesn't like, they're part of this thing, whatever it is. Like it's almost like a belief in a Volkgeist or like something. Like there's just like a general spirit of Judaism that's like inherent in these people. They can't help it. Like they can be as far away from it as possible.
It's classic anti-Semitism.
Which is, yeah, it's just because it makes it not about religion, not about culture. It's really about just like something in the genes, right? He's like very focused on like this very genetic explanation, which also gets to his IQ point. And then when anytime a non-Jew does it, they must be somehow have done it because the Jew convinced them to or influenced them. Right? As opposed to like, hey, liberalism's already a thing in the water, and it was promising a lot to Jews. So of course Jews would go toward that because it gave them opportunities that, right? Like
honestly, I think you're spending a lot of time giving the guy more
I think
space than he needs.
I think it's worth saying what he actually says, because Boyce didn't really say it, and you didn't really say it in your critique. I think it's worth saying what he says and saying like, hey, like just point out the obvious of like why this doesn't make sense. And like there are parts of it, as you said, there's kernels of truth, and we can talk about the kernels of truth. And fine, like we should. I mean, if nothing else, like say, okay, fine, yeah. It's not untrue that like there were lots of I don't know. Let's pick. There are lots of Jews in psychology. We can sort of explain why that happened. It's not particularly because something about Jewish culture or they're being particularly religious or anything, right? They didn't pick that up, and I don't even think it's genetic, right? For a lot of that, I think it's socioeconomic.
I think the biggest thing is that it's not. It is untrue that nobody's willing to talk to Benjamin Boyce about this stuff.
That is also the case. I mean, if you want. Yeah.
You
talk to any of us. Yeah,
he can talk to Brett Weinstein, who's a friend of his, as far as I know.
Okay, question: why is it us that are speaking now and not Brent Weinstein? Where is Brent Weinstein?
First of all, I don't know how much Brett is keeping tabs on everything that Benjamin Boyce does. Benjamin Boyce is on a much smaller level than Brett Weinstein is. Second, I am positive that if Benjamin Boyce and Brett Weinstein have had some sort of falling out or have serious disagreements, Brett Weinstein is not going to bring it out in the open and discuss it because he believes too much in loyalty for that.
Mm-hmm. But would he call him and have a private conversation? That's the question.
I can only hope. I am not friends enough with Brett to be able to.
Well, as you said, books like this come out in every generation. I am not surprised in the least. In fact, it is the narrative on which I was educated. It is the reason for who I am. In contrast to you, guys. Question is, yes, analyzing the book that you yourself said it was unrefutable was a waste of time. Question is, okay, what can we do in this generation that we haven't done in any previous generation?
Well, I'm wondering what the quote was that you put into the chat.
Well, this is one of the songs that we taught me at school. It is dated 1942, and it is about a daughter of a rabbi who fell in love with the prince. And the prince turned out to be anti-Semitic. But that is, the anecdotes are multiple. When I grew up, the best comedian in Israel was an Hungarian Jew that somehow escaped. And he was talking about his school friends. He had very good buddies at school. And suddenly they all turned on him. Suddenly he was the enemy and he was to be executed. For him, it was a larger shock than you with this current clip. Yeah, this is the way of the world. This is the way the world always have been. These are the you can say it is in their genes and it's in their culture. This is the world we live in.
I am reluctant to say. So this is one of the things that has happened. Is there are Jews? I forget who the guy I'm talking about specifically, but one particular commenter, Jewish commenter, said anti-Semitism is in the DNA of Europe, and now all the anti-Semites are like, "Hey, they agree with us. This is a race war." I am reluctant to agree that this is a race war.
It always has been a war. If you look at any tribes in Papua New Guinea, they're always in constant war with each other over the latest hunt over territory. On the other hand, people are good. Even the worst enemies always do commerce.
Well, this is one of the points that I definitely wanted to make, which is while we are seeing an online growth of anti-Semitism and, frankly, real-life anti-Semitism, which is worrying, I still think, look, I have a lot of Christian friends who I believe will go to bat for me and for us. And I don't believe that Nick Fuentes is as popular as his fans want people to believe. And I don't think that we are inevitably going towards a repeat of what we have seen so many times before. But at the same time, when I was watching When I was watching Kale Zeldin and Grimm, and Kale expressed his doubt about Rod Dreher, and I think the words he used was people warming up the ovens. I got very upset, and frankly, I sent him a direct message that I probably should not have, saying, "You know too much history for this." So yeah, I don't want to make it sound like this is just all same old, but let's face, you're absolutely right. The Holocaust wasn't that long ago.
And it's not even that. Look what happened to the Jewry of England. It's a recurring theme. It wasn't. What happens is that the technology changes, and we have gone to a global situation where the Jews have nowhere to run anymore. I mean, it used to be that you are expelled and you go you go from Spain to Turkey, or you go from France to Germany, or from Germany to Poland, or from Poland to Russia. That's it. The earth has become too small for us Jews. It is now stand and in your position and fight. And I respect your position. You don't have to go to this very unpleasant land and have this unpleasant fight with me. But okay, next chapter, what are we going to do?
Yosef?
No idea.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for Chezi to come into air and tell us that
No,
people are
me
good
here.
and everything is fine.
I mean, I think we know what he would say to what you just said. The Earth being too small, what are we going to do? And stand and fight is clearly a lead into a Zionist, like this is why we need Israel as the place to go. I mean, I shouldn't speak for him, but I probably anticipate part of that as being his answer.
I'll speak for the non-Zionists.
Yeah, speak for the non-Zionists.
I think we are in a much stronger position, seeking the help of our very faithful Christian brethren, than we are concentrating in a land and trying to fight the rest of the world by ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. Fine with me. Okay, so go on. How do you going to do that?
Well, that was part of the reason for the stream and for the discussion.
Yeah.
Is James Lindsay has been posting on Twitter, "Never again is now," and I can show you the articles I wrote for the Daily Trojan back in 1997, 98, where I kept on saying to people, stop calling people anti-Semites because you're crying wolf, and when the real anti-Semites come, nobody's going to listen to you. And I am in the unenviable position of 30 years later being able to say, I told you so. Yay?
Yeah, but people will not listen to you anyway. Now, look, when you talk to your Christian friends, you've spent quite a number of hours reproaching them about their belief in Trinity, and you spent quite a number of hours telling them that burning people on the stake and not repenting over it is also not advisable. To what extent has anyone ever listened to you?
Good question. Good question. I don't know. Maybe nobody listens. My dog certainly doesn't listen.
So I want to go back to your non-Zionist take on that it's not Israel that's necessary as much as our connection to Christians in order to protect us, which is a very diaspora kind of read, but I hear you, and I accept that that's probably mostly true. I also can hear Chezi saying that's Galut mindset in my head, but it's never again might be now in a sense, but I think that is probably more extreme. Like again, there's a crying wolf element that I want to be careful with there, where like this is on the right at least mostly still confined to online culture in pockets. There's not these huge kind of marches.
Speak of the Zionists.
It's not these huge marches that we're seeing from the far left / their allies, and there's on that side, like the threat is just different in how it's manifesting. I think. So I want to be careful. It's never going to. Also, though, the other thing I wanted to say before I let Chezi talk is just like, in some ways, I think Jews now are in a lot better position than they were in the 1930s with regard to like most of the world, especially Christianity. Like we do have a lot. We have a lot more allies, and it's not a zero-sum game. One, to like go directly against McDonald's thesis here. Like let's not talk about this as a zero-sum game. We have a lot of allies, both kind of within the liberal sphere and also within the Christian sphere. Right, liberal, I mean classically liberal, like that are, whether they're Zionists or not, like our relationships with Catholicism, with Protestants, globally, but also especially in the U.S., are just a lot better, and we have a lot of shared interests, and it is not a zero-sum game at all. And like the fact that like our participation in this corner is pretty much a testament to like that this is not a zero-sum game, that we feel like this is in this conversation, these dialogues, these like all these things that these streams, everything that happens, because there's a lot of shared mutual interests and respect and benefit, and like I don't want to reduce it to Darwinian, just like like risk and benefit, and we kind of share the same like whatever, like very cost benefit analysis style. But we could, and I still think there's like a lot of like good cooperation. Forget like the relationships and the love and the respect and like all the other things that like a Darwinian analysis wouldn't take into account. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I can hear that hope, whether it's a Gallus mindset or not, and I yeah, I mean that's why we're here.
Okay, Chezi.
Leslie's turn.
All right. First off, Shabbat Tov. I hope everyone had a wonderful Shabbat. There's many different points of entry here, so I'll just jump on. That the zero-sum game attitude which or analysis, which Yosef correctly dismantled in a certain sense. Well, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. I'm gonna take a step back. When you read about, the idea of like, Jews cultivating an IQ, a higher IQ and doing all these moves because of the zero sum game. What is the goal in his mind, Yosef? If you don't mind me first asking you a question, like, why are we cultivating this power? Is it like, to take over the world? Like, what is the end goal in this in the Nick Fuentes mind, or even the Benjamin Boyce mind? Like, why are we trying to gain this power? What's the goal?
So I understand, at least from like, I don't know I'm not for Fuentes and for Boyce. McDonald just sees it, as this is a survival mechanism, Darwinian survival. That's the goal. And within Darwinian survival, he's sort of created a framing that the only way that Jews can survive is by kind of destroying the American, Eurocentric, like Christian America, and somehow it's like Jews are a parasite on this host, but it's a parasite that doesn't survive by like making sure the host survives and reproduce the parasite. No, it's a parasite that kills its host, which seems to sort of be that doesn't make sense.
This is
we can
a
talk about that.
Hobbesian.
This is a very Hobbes, yeah.
Yeah, this is a Hobbesian Darwinism that isn't actually scientific in any way.
Not at all.
But it's a threat analysis that as human beings we fall into and have nightmares about.
Well, I would then ask Yosef, with that framing, let's go back to your conversation with Christian Baxter, okay? And then what do you think it sounds like when you say, Jews are very influential in Hollywood because we had to? The stories of Batman and Superman, we're writing those stories, right? We're sort of like you said, we are curating Americana at that time, right? So what is, just Hollywood, and I'm just looking at superheroes, and even if you look about the rise of, let's say, the MCU and the DCU, like in the culture as well, like how should someone looking from the outside think about that? Which is, one second, our main superheroes and our culture has all been curated by Jews. Even the song "Somewhere Over the Rainbow" is curated by Jews. So,
So this is an interesting challenge, right? Because on the one hand, Jews, like other ethnic other just minorities, don't have to be ethnic specifically, but other minorities in the American context, when we tell stories about ourselves to ourselves, we highlight the contributions we've made, and that is in part to kind of it's a source of like pride, like, hey, like we are part of this larger culture and we've made these key contributions. I can also understand that someone hearing that can be like get nervous by that, because like, does that mean, and then this gets into like kind of what a vision of America is, and like, do you accept contributions from other cultures, or are you really trying to be conservative and like not in the sense that any conservative is, but conservative in the sense of like actually really sticking to something of the past that doesn't change at all, or just something that only organically changes, no outside influence, it doesn't respond, its environment has to be static for that, like we're thinking about biology here, but like there's no changes, it doesn't respond, it just, we're going to stick to this, that's the thing, which isn't like ever true of any for any species, but like, or subgroup, but like, let's pretend in some like weird scientific world. At the same time, I can also see like, yeah, I mean, there's this weird thing, because Jews did contribute a lot to American culture. I can't say we contributed the majority of American culture. Like, there are certainly things that we did contribute. When comic books came out, remember, they were super not cool. They were things that kids read. Adults didn't really read, except for the really weird adults. They were like super nerds. And insofar as that there was influence like there, it's hard to say what this is. Wow, the sound is my sound very
I
bad?
muted
Like,
Fezzi.
Okay.
Muted Fezzi.
But like insofar as there's influence there, a lot of the influence I think of comic book superhero stuff really has to do with much later movie culture in like the early 2000s or late 90s than it has to do with the actual comic books themselves. Though obviously comic books did shape, you know, a segment of American thought. There's no question. And like, yeah, Jews are overrepresented in a bunch of other intellectual things because of urbanization, valuing education, maybe high IQ to some extent, though a lot of those studies are a little overblown. But there's something to be said there. It's not nothing. Speaking of one of like a kernel of truth, though he explains it as like a eugenic plot to like, you know, destroy the world kind of in his book, but like leaving that aside and just like looking at like the data. Yeah, there's lots of reasons why there's like overrepresentation. It is interesting that the areas that Jews really were big in, and they're not as big anymore, right? Like a lot of these areas, like when comic books became like this big thing in the movies, like Jewish influence in Hollywood had waned quite a lot, especially, and anything that was left there certainly wasn't coming from anyone who really had a lot of connection to Judaism and like meaningful educated. I mean, there's some. I'm not going to say there's nothing. There's clearly big conservative synagogues in LA. There's Reform synagogues in LA. There's some Orthodox ones, but like a lot of people in the movie business are not coming there and coming with much as far as maybe, I mean, beyond maybe cultural Judaism to some degree. And even there, it's not so clear. And this is why like there's a huge like in the Zionism versus anti-Zionism of Jews in Hollywood right now. I mean, if we just look at that subset, like there's a huge rift on that issue. So yeah, I think ultimately there's a question to be had about there is like history to be acknowledged. Yes, Jews were pushed into Hollywood, and yes, that meant that they were making a lot of movies. It also meant that they were constrained in many ways by other people's visions that, you know, on what to put in those movies. There's like a complicated kind of relationship there. But ultimately, that was a relationship that wasn't competitive, but it was a form of cooperation. The Jews who wanted to stay in Hollywood had to play by the rules that were set mostly by kind of WASP elites, whether they were government or social. And those WASP elites basically kept supporting those Jews staying in Hollywood, making them stories that they wanted to be told. So like it's a, you know, there's a lot of very high cooperation. We can talk about whether that was good or bad, but to say like it was, you know, this, you know, Jews had a hand in it. But to say that Jews were setting the agenda, Jews were like shaping this is a little bit strong. They had a lot more leeway in the comic books than they did in Hollywood. That's for sure.
Yeah, but you keep spending our time refuting the argument.
Yes.
Okay, but that is not a subject. This is not what we should in a conversation about Arba. You could write a book about it. You could do a video, a monologue video.
Okay, let's chat.
That is more, I don't know, with a better microphone and after some preparation.
I was going somewhere with this for a second, so give me a little, give me some leeway. Okay, so Yosef, thank you for that, and I agree with much of what you're saying. I want to stress out something else, though, based on what you're saying, and I'll try to bring Nick Fuentes into this as well. But as we know, this week's portion, right? Joseph decides to try to, you know, save the world, so to speak, from within Egypt, wearing the, you know, the garbs of the places that he has been destined to rule in. And as far as he's concerned, this is a perfect opportunity to manifest, and the nations of the world will be blessed through you, right? I'm in this position. I'm in this power. This is fantastic. And mass, urbanization and, playing according to some of the midrash, he even has the Egyptians circumcised, right? Like he's really trying to do this cultural overhaul, and the Torah stresses to us that, or mentions to us, that the lands of the Kohanim, right, the priests in Egypt, were not actually part of this move. They were not. They were untouchable by Joseph. And skip to a few portions from now, and a new king rose that did not know Joseph. And when I hear Nick Fuentes speak, right, when I hear him talking about, and quite articulate also about certain of these ideas, which is, interesting, I hear also a critique of, it's uncomfortable, like both theologically and just socially, why we always have to be dealing with these Joseph characters, right? Well, who are these people that are rising up and suddenly have a tremendous amount of power and tremendous amount of sway, and they're successful? And I'm saying that model, that archetype we see in this portion, when we know it doesn't work. And the tension he has with Judah is because we don't, and you guys were correct, which relates to, the Gullus mindset. That mindset does not work. And in the end, we have to understand that that the only way, I think, the only way the world can handle the Jewish experience, it's from its natural place. And once it grows inside a different society, at some point, and not because of there's a plan to take over the world or all those good stuff, but naturally, the hope, the vision, the theology of the Jewish people, from those that are observant to those that are even less observant, but I would say subconsciously it's ingrained into them, their outlook of the world is completely different. And we've obviously all benefited from that when you put Athens and Jerusalem together and all those nice stuff. But I would say that is a tension that is rightfully being felt. And when you hear someone talking about dual loyalty, it's a real question. When you hear like Ben Shapiro says, like, I'm America first, like I get all that, but you're actually Jewish first. And that does have implications, because you're not quote unquote Israeli first because of you're not like even Jacob, I would say, and Jacob, you could correct me if I'm wrong. Jacob is Jewish first, right? And then he'll be like, and I'm America first, because he doesn't recognize, let's say, the state of Israel. Sure. But when the real state of Israel emerges, he will be Israel first, right? So at that point, you will no longer be America first.
So when the Jewish state arises, I will be precisely as America first as any of the Christians will be America first.
Good point. You're right. You're right.
And when you're saying like the Gullus mindset doesn't work, well, it's the only thing that has worked for 3,000 years.
As we told it would. We would be in diaspora. We would be small, around many. It would be hardship. There would be death. And
how do I know you're not Nachshon ben Aminadav jumping into the sea?
Wait, that's a separate
no, that's the wrong
about, let's say.
What?
I was just saying that we can get into that, but we're not even going yet to that conversation. Unless you're opening up that the contention is the state of Israel itself, basically, and that's what people can't handle. But
Yosef, help me.
The Joseph, I wouldn't say the Joseph model doesn't work. I would say it's clearly recognized as a temporary state, but it is one that we come back to all the time. I mean, we come back to it with Daniel, and we come back to it with Esther, and like the Joseph model. And we can talk about, like there's a lot to talk about the Joseph model. I mean, we can talk about like theologically its implications, but like ultimately it is a model that, that while temporary works for what it is, and it has this promise of, God will things that you did for bad will come out good, and like you got, you know, that's just part of it, and like it's not, and I would say there's a big critique, right, in Joseph's wielding, like the text is not shy of critiquing Joseph's kind of wielding of power with what he does to the Egyptians at the end of this end of this story. I mean, it's really an anti-sabbatical, right? He's depriving them of their lands. They're being removed from any connection to their lands. He's taking a double tithe from them, and practically he does save Egypt. I mean, that's the thing. Like, he does save Egypt. There's a bit of an interesting thing where he like shows this kind of favoritism to his family. We can talk about that too, and what he's doing in that. And how much that has to be within the Joseph model or not, but he does save Egypt and his family, and that, you know, there wouldn't be the next part of the story, Exodus, right? There is no Exodus unless Joseph saves them. There isn't. Like they neither become slaves nor freed from slavery. But the family wouldn't have survived if he hadn't saved them, perhaps, right? There wouldn't, like, none of this would have been something to talk about in the first place. You know,
but what does he tell them at the end?
Which part? Which end? There's multiple. I think so. Sorry.
I mean, what he tells them, he gives them the code to recognize when Moses will come, and tells them, "Remove my bones from here." Right? The Midrash gives us this whole example also about these bones, trying to even be hidden, right, by the Egyptians. They don't want it to leave, and we have to get the bones out. But why is Joseph, right, the prince of Egypt, enjoying himself over there, saving Egypt, the Garbs, he's even him and his father.
I have a point of order. What is the conversation about? I mean, perhaps we have sort of talked about enough about that point.
Sure.
I mean, I have granted Jacob that he should not, I mean, he does not have to go to the land of Zion and had his war against anti-Semitism within Israel. I grant Jacob that it is something that he's doing from within America. And let's go continue from that point. One thing that important that Chazi mentioned is we have to figure out the motivation of the people involved. People are trying to appeal to the suppressed white American male, and the white American male has been suppressed, and he needs to be liberated. And that can be done by channeling aggression to some minority group, but it can be done by some other way. The power of that suppressed majority needs to be channeled to productive enterprises.
I mean, it sounds like we have very different. I mean, it's not surprising. Chazi thinks the answer is for me to pick up and just move to Israel, which is part of what I hate about Zionism. It really is.
Okay, so ignore Chazi and move on.
Yeah, move
no,
on to
it's not just Chazi. Yoram Hazoni has insinuated himself into conservative American politics with a very similar point of view. That I can't be a citizen of the United States. I am more a citizen of Israel than I am of the United States. And I'm not.
I mean, I would argue that increasingly, right, you are, because either you're being recognized as Israel from a Zionistic perspective, which we know you reject, or you're being recognized as Israel by your enemies.
So I mean, we're back to the Zionists stoking anti-Semitism, so Jews are forced to be Zionists.
No,
No,
I think. Sorry, please go ahead, Yoav.
I think the point is, as Jordan Peterson taught us, clean your room first. If you have a problem with your Jewish brothers being non-productive, then indeed you have to settle this among the Jews first before going out. Because, as Jordan Peterson said, you will not fix the world. If you work hard, you might clean your room, and you may sort out your family. And that is the situation in Israel at the moment. We have events here in Israel that are equivalent to the Dreyfus Affair, and will, one way or another, will make much of an upheaval. And we have to sort this out first before we go out to the nations and explain our position.
I mean, what you're saying, Yoav, is I think is obviously true. I mean, I've been going on and on about that. I think we have to obviously figure out things internally before we could actually emerge, and I think that's part of what the world is waiting for in a certain sense, which is there's this tension, which is, I mean, I maybe I'm wrong about this, but even when I hear Nick Fuentes talk under like the insanity, what I hear is someone pushing me to say, this is not what you're supposed to be. This model that you are right now is just sitting on a nerve of the world, which is either you're Judas or you're Jesus. There's nothing like in the middle of like this sort of like nice little Jew. Like it's and that's what I started with. And Jacob, like, when you're saying about like I can't be an American citizen, quote unquote, I saw myself or see myself in a certain sense as like a proud American by the idea that what America has done for the world and how great it is. However, I see that the story of America, and I would argue that Americans themselves see the story of America as through a religious prism. So because of that, I connect to America because I ultimately believe it's another expression of my story. So naturally, there's an affinity there. But as America loses its north and its meaning, having this Jewish enclave that keeps on, again, subconsciously pointing towards the Bible or pointing towards the story by its symbolism, by the fact that these wars are happening I'm saying that the idea that we have to keep on going back to this argument also with anti-Semites with regards to who is the land, was their land yours, are you Ashkenazi, are you genetics really that, because it falls down to the claim of you're saying you're these people from the book, and that has weight to it also worldwide. So
Chezi, you view things in Israel with these rosy colored glasses, right? Like Sephardim in Israel are used to being called the N-word.
No, Jacob, they're not.
Yes. No, I've been there. I have family there. The problems that exist in Eretz Israel with living in Galut, as the Satmar Rebbe said, living in Galut among other Jews will be worse than living in Galut among Gentiles. And I frankly think that that's borne itself out.
No, Jacob, I reject that. It might happen in the past, and it was not the N-word because of different cultures. We don't have the N-word in Israel. because we don't have the history. We use other words that you are equivalenting.
No. I was called the N-word.
Okay. You poor guy. Second, it is not relevant anymore because of large scale intermarriage.
Yeah. in 20 years,
Thirdly, it is extremely relevant, and you are extremely right, because as I was referring to the Dreyfus, the Israeli Dreyfus affair earlier, it is a case of an elite of one group treating the majority of the citizens like rubbish, even if they will not speak these words again, they think like that. And as I said, it's going to be a huge upheaval about it, and we are going to sort this out.
The
soon.
one word in modern Hebrew I hear more than any, and I read on Twitter more than any, is parazit. And you can imagine who they mean when they talk about parazitim.
Well, yes, they talk like that, but it's still a slogan, and you have to dive deep into the root of the problem. The root of the problem is indeed the Orthodox don't serve in the army. That's a problem. I completely understand why they don't serve in the army. Things have to change such that they can comfortably serve in the army, and that state in which they serve in the army is also already very close to Chazi's wildest dreams.
I don't
I
know.
mean,
Shaul.
both-
I think Shaul is a garment of Esav, and he hasn't been on for a while. I don't know how much we're going to open up this conversation. Yes, Chazi, what were you saying?
I was going to say both could be. I mean, both are true, which is there's a tension in the interior of Israel about who we are, and we're trying to find that out. I would say both, and Yoav, Yoav will excuse me over here, but I would say Yosef, Jacob, and I would assume all hope that the stress of the Jewishness of the country of Israel, you could open up that side discussion, ultimately prevails, and that ends up manifesting into what we quote unquote want it to be. However, there's a tension there right now, and there's a tension felt also abroad as well, right? So the two of those tensions are obviously true. Now, back to Jacob, back to like what you're saying. When you hear Nick Fuentes comes and says, right? He talks about he had this on the Piers Morgan. He had this on the Piers Morgan podcast or whatever show, where he said he asked him about world Jewry, and he said, "Do you not think that sounds anti-Semitic?" He was trying to do like a got you to Piers Morgan, and I think it was there is an actual world Jewry organization, and Jews all around, they work together in the diaspora, helping each other out. And he's like, that's fantastic. I love that they're doing that. They shouldn't do that here. Now, I don't hear that as something like disgusting in a certain sense. I understand him saying like, who are these people that are always sticking together, that have each other's back like other people don't? And because of that, and because of the way they see themselves, right? That built into it, there is a priority, there is a different hierarchy of how they see each other. So when you say American first, do you not carry that with Jewish first, then American?
Well, yes, because God before country, but that's why I will not pray in a synagogue that has an American flag or an Israeli flag.
Sure, no problem. Again, we put aside about what the current state of Israel is. Nevertheless, you say God before country, and your God has given you a piece of land that's connected.
Piece of land.
Let's go back to something else here that both came up. I think Yoav mentioned it, Chazi. And it's what you're talking about now, Chazi, but I want to take it out of the Zionist frame for a second.
Sure.
So something I know I talked about it a little bit in BOM and also with Jacobs, right? There was this what was it, Harvard? No, not Manhattan Institute. One of the think tanks, one of the conservative think tanks had this poll. It's not a perfect poll, but a decent sized poll. Manhattan, thank you. And they asked current people who in America who identify as Republican whether they think X group has dual loyalty. They didn't really define it so much beyond dual loyalty. They had like a one sentence definition of that. But like, do they have a second loyalty to something else that might be higher than America, or you suspect that? And they asked us about Jewish Americans, Chinese Americans, Indian Americans, Mexican Americans, Muslim Americans. I can't remember actually. Was it Arab Americans or Muslim? I can't remember which one they chose. And also evangelical Americans, which was an interesting choice. And every group, somewhere between 20 to like 30, I think it was between 20 and 35% of current Republicans thought that group, any of those groups, had dual loyalties to something. They didn't actually specify, like, to ask the people like what they believe they have a dual loyalty to, like what entity. Some of them seem to be like pretty clearly implied, and some of them I think would be nice to actually get more data on. And with this poll, it was fascinating, right? Because it was interesting to see compare. Jews were not the highest, by the way. We were like third or fourth on the list of those suspected dual loyalties. And then this kind of generated a bit of a conversation on the BOM server. Since I don't think any of you really were there, I'll kind of summarize it quickly. Where it was is this question of, Jacob and I are not citizens of Israel. Technically, we could become citizens of Israel. I could also become a citizen of Poland and be an EU, like person, because of what happened. The current laws there. There are times when Spain and Portugal have opened up their citizenships. I think Italy for persecution. But no one suspects me of dual loyalty to Poland. And I mean, I don't know that anyone actually suspects me of dual loyalty to Israel. I'm an American citizen, and on top of that, like, I have taken oaths to be loyal to this country, like for various things because of my work, right? So like, when we talk about dual loyalty, I think there's a bunch of weird stuff, because one, there's kind of this exceptional thing that we think about as Jews. We have a history here of this accusation that predates the state of Israel by a long time, right? Because to your point about world Jewry, people suspected Jews of not being loyal to nation states long before Israel, because either they were loyal to other Jews and that's it, or they were new citizens.
Of Pharaoh.
Yeah, speaking of Pharaoh, or they were newly made citizens of these new nation states, but like, this borders kept changing, and now they're in Germany, but they used to be in France. This is the whole Dreyfus affair, right? So like, maybe he's still loyal to Germany because that's where, like, he was originally given citizenship, even though we've taken that land now. And like, he was very clearly innocent, but like, whatever, that was a suspicion. And this charge has nothing to do with Zionism, really, the dual loyalty one. I think Zionism allows it to like have a focus and like a very specific like entity and target. But like, this has long been a charge, and a suspicion. You can talk about anti-Semitic, but like, as I just pointed out, lots of groups are suspected of dual loyalty. So like, whether we should limit it to anti-Semitism is probably not super useful in this conversation. On top of that, there's also like, you can be a dual citizen of both countries right now. We don't have a problem with dual loyalty in theory, with the current diplomatic arrangements that the United States has with certain of its allies. Just like you can be a Canadian American and have citizenship in both, you can have that with Israel. And we give security clearances to people with double citizenship, and we allow them to have public office, and we allow them to serve in the military and make decisions, right? And like, that should sort of be like, it's not, again, it's not a zero-sum thing. And if we just think about things as zero-sum, I think it really doesn't make sense here. Like you can have more than one loyalty in many of these situations, especially the ones that America has already sanctioned as legal, in a very clear way.
Joseph, can you have,
Yeah.
but doesn't it become zero sum when you're talking about a theology? If it's a national,
I'm not. We can talk about theology, but this is politics, right? Loyalty. I mean, we're talking about politics right now, and in politics, you can have multiple competing loyalties, or not even competing, in cooperative loyalties. The only problem with the dual loyalty in this sort of political one is if for some reason America and Israel went to war, and diplomatic relations broke down, and they rescinded the ability to have dual citizenship, and people who had dual citizenship would have to choose. That wouldn't affect me. I'm not a dual citizen, right? Like, and I wouldn't even have that issue. But like, if America and Israel ever went to war in a crazy, situation, how might that ever happen? Like, hopefully nothing like this ever happens. Then we could have like a real conversation about like, oh, they're really, there's like an Israel thing here, and they're more loyal to that than this. But that would also limit it to like a very, again, like within the political realm of specifically the Zionism, and like in Israel versus America, it doesn't really talk about like loyalty to Jews or world Jewry or some other kind of concept. What that would even look like is kind of interesting. Like again, like the examples I can think of, lots of historical examples. A lot of them, or much more in people's heads than actual real things. Like during the Civil War, when Grant expelled the Jews because he suspected them of supporting the Jews on the other side of the border, because they were sending them Pesach supplies. Like, yeah.
I was also thinking like Neil about the Japanese
Mhm.
internment. And apparently Trey has decided he wants to wear the shirt of the anti-Semites representing the anti-Semitic party in the United States.
You can't see my shirt. I'm not wearing any shirt. I've never worn any shirts. Okay. Hands up. I just got my hands up. I'm not trying to do anything. Anthony's roboting like crazy.
Yosef, but
Yes.
I would I think challenge that by and maybe not necessarily challenge that, but again, when I hear Doug Wilson, which is very obviously the Nick Fuentes, but when he talks about this is a Christian country, and when then on top of the meaning crisis, which is okay, America is moving back. I mean, this is a separate conversation that you hear, like that Benjamin Boyce or even Brett Weinstein, Paul recently put it out like a video of them, like are they recognizing the need for religion and what that would mean, like what would that mean? And then Brett Weinstein was saying how like the New Testament is like like an updating of, let's say, the operating system, like in the terminology he likes to use, like we're niche switching. So
it was really poorly written. He needed someone to fact check him.
So when you see that voice coming up, so then you're saying like, I'm an American citizen, I'm an Israeli citizen as well, right? Those that we should be able to have both of those things as dual loyalty. But once America wants to start defining itself again as, let's say, Christian, and then you have a story that of a nationality that its theology, I would say, in the eyes of many Christians, also in the eyes of Jews, but let's say, let's say, my more pluralistic attitude, that is a problem, right? That is a built-in tension, which is not only. Sorry.
It could be a problem, but one, I mean, Doug Wilson, as much as he would like to, doesn't define Christian nationalism. And there are many voices, and just like in Israel, there are many voices around how pluralistic, a Jewish state could be. That also exists in Christianity, and I think as long as I am an American, and you know, and I hope that continues for a good long time. Like, I would like to. I think that's part of being here and being in these conversations. And yeah, is talking to and expanding or pushing on the visions of Christian nationalism that are. I mean, okay, let's talk about. You want to get into kind of where we started this video, is like a Christian nationalism that's still as pluralistic enough to have Jews as part of that conversation and as part of that society. It's possible that America goes in a different direction. Absolutely none of this is set in stone, right? Like this is a very wide open space right now, even on the Christian right. Like this is a hugely open space. I don't see the voice. I don't see the Christian nationalists anywhere near as strong as the Jewish nationalists in Israel are. This is a hugely different conversation there, because there's already like gone down a very clear and different path, and Israel's still struggling with this, obviously. But like there's a very different conversation happening.
So Iran still claims me as a citizen, even though I renounced Iranian citizenship when I became an American citizen. I could have Iranian citizenship if I wanted to. I don't. I have American citizenship and I don't have Israeli citizenship, partly because I don't believe you can have a religious democracy. You cannot have a democracy that is an actual democracy like the United States is, where, yes, a Jew, a Muslim can become president of the United States. And frankly, I don't see how an Arab feels like a full citizen, an Arab Muslim or a Christian feels like a full citizen of the state of Israel, which is why I think Israel is an oxymoron and silly and something that cannot stand. So, like, this is not an option for me. I don't want to live in a theocracy in Iran. I don't want to live in a theocracy in the United States. And I don't want to live in a theocracy in Israel either. And that's not a matter of it is partly my religious convictions, but my religious convictions, because I believe that being a Jew is inherently opposed to this sort of political nationalism.
Yeah, I'm also, there's a weird tension here too, because not only can a Jew or a Muslim be president, but even just a Catholic can, which Doug Wilson I don't think would allow, right? Like I think there is like he
thinks anyone who's a Nicene Christian. He doesn't think Mitt Romney should be allowed to be president.
And not Sam. But okay.
Right, and not Sam, exactly. Yes. Everybody beats up on poor Sam.
Because I do think there is this like weird, like a lot of where this conversation, where we started at, which was around More Fuentes, so we didn't mention others, but like a lot of it comes out of this world that's much more kind of adjacent to Catholicism, and is not as involved in, as far as I can tell, in the Christian nationalist kind of visions, which tend to be more Protestant, like kind of people. And I think there probably are different conversations to be had here with Catholicism and Protestantism and Eastern Orthodoxy. I don't think those are going to be the same conversation at all. Even if right now politics just makes kind of strange bedfellows to some degree. I mean, where Yoram Hazony and Doug Wilson are bedfellows, like much less, any of the kind of Catholic Christian nationalist allies.
I just don't understand how the idea of forget modern Israel, Jacob's version of Israel, okay? Do you not see resistance to that? Built into that idea, there's resistance to that because Israel is not looking forget how Chazi sees it, how Jacob sees it, how Yosef sees it. It's never looking to be like a Switzerland or some other country, right? Denmark doesn't have aspirations of Tikkun Olam. It doesn't matter that Bibi does or Bibi doesn't. The Jewish people and the World Jewry Organization, and that story, the idea that Jews are still walking around is in within itself an indication of a people that are something different, that have aspirations that are different than the rest of the world. And it is scary, I think, for people to then see a nation like that take form, have a nuclear power, become a superpower in the Middle East, right? So are you telling people to just ignore those things? Like, again, Jacob, you might look at them differently. How do you think the world should look at since 1948 and all the things that are happening and gathering of people? So, like, I don't understand how we want to ignore that tension, which is like, how should people think about that?
I can tell you how I think about it. You won't like it.
I'd also say the narrative is wrong. Like the founders of the modern state for the first many, many decades, and this is changing now. It is. For the first many, many decades, wanted to create a state like any other. That was their explicit and stated goal, right? Like that, and maybe, I mean, we can talk about whether they were misguided, whether they were misaligned with the rest of world Jewry. We can talk about all those things, but like their stated goal was a state like any other, and it didn't.
Right.
And they didn't get brownie points for that. No one, they didn't lessen anti-Semitism or like improve Israel's relations with the world by trying to be a state like any other. All right, like I don't think this has to necessarily do. Like, we can talk about these really like high theological ideas, but I don't think that's not the cause of this, and that's not the reason.
What was that famous quote Haredim love to quote? Israel will be its own state when we have our own prostitutes. Was that the quote?
I
don't know that quote, but I can tell you the quote of why Haman wanted to destroy us. And it just sounds like any textbook that a anti-Semite would say today. They're different. They do things differently. They're doing their own thing, right? Then and now. And
right. They called us parasitim then, and they call us parasitim now.
And Yosef, you're saying there wasn't the intention to become like, right, we want it to be like everyone else. Like Joseph tells the brother, like, it doesn't matter what your plan was. Right? That doesn't, we can't control how these things manifest and how these things come to be. Now you're here in this situation where you have the state, which is now going through another evolution, which I'm obviously happy about because I wanted to remove, in some sense, its secular infrastructure, right? Whatever that's relevant of it, whatever doesn't align with obviously our values. But how would we ignore how the world sees it from outside, right? I don't think people don't.
That was Hashkacha Pratit.
That is how Hashem wanted it to happen. Yeah.
Yoav could speak. Yoav, you have the floor.
I think that we have de facto agreement that we can at the moment draft a joint statement to the world at large. And I think we have a de facto agreement that we have to sort our own house in order first. And that means that to the subject of the discussion here about what are we going to do with anti-Semitism, the conclusion is going to be that we are at the moment going to do nothing at all. I mean, individually we can. The comment of Israel wanting to be a special, better nation than others is important because that is also the aspiration of the secular part. And that is now manifested by the aspiration of the Israeli Supreme Court. Israeli Supreme Court establish itself as the Supreme Court, supreme to any other. And that is going to crumble and fall. And the question is going to be, what is going to arise on its ashes? Will it be a reformed secular Supreme Court? Or will it be a Sanhedrin? Or will it be something that I could not even dream about? Time will tell.
I think it's I don't know how we could ignore the idea that and October 7th has a lot to do with it, because like it brought up to the consciousness also of a lot of people, okay, there's this country over here that and you know, all the caveats of like, you know, Israel trying to be careful and all the good stuff that we already know. I don't have to go through all those points again right now, but people see this tremendous amount of death. People see, you know, money going towards these causes, right? That's like the argument was being called. We should be America first. We shouldn't be involved in these wars, particularly because explaining, unlike Russia and Ukraine, which is just a political argument, explaining Israel always goes back to, why are you here? How did you get here? And that story is theological. And we can't ask people to ignore that. We could say like, no, just a country like every hour, like they're doing this, they're booming that. Why are they there? How are they dead to get there? Why are they doing this? It's not their land. It's an occupation. All those things immediately lead you to a biblical conversation. And if I'm an America first, why? Okay, so like if it was just regular rules, then this should be easy to solve. But because it's not, so it's difficult to solve. I have to look at this now differently and understand like my relation with these special Jews, and I have to start getting into the conversation about Judeo-Christian values. And then once you're putting me in that frame, then I have to start asking, wait, who are these Jews? What do I want with these Jews? What are my relationship with these Jews? What are they really trying to do? Even if it's not in this state of Israel ultimately, and how does that align? And that's different from we're okay with Jews living in our land. It's different, which is, are we okay building up a country of just Jews that has like a different mission of ours that also is universal? And I don't understand how like you guys think that a conversation could be avoided, or that's not what's undergirding, let's say, the political conversation, because it's not how
Israel
much money
is not a country
that,
of just Jews. It never has been, and until Mashiach comes, I don't see it becoming.
Jacob, do you understand the thing you're saying? You don't think Israel is the country of Jews? You don't think that?
Of just Jews? Of course not.
I didn't say just
yeah,
Jews.
you did. You said just Jews.
The majority is Jewish. The symbols are Jewish. They have they have laws built into the country that make it a Jewish state. It doesn't mean Jews don't live there.
The majority of the Jews do not consider themselves religious.
I disagree with that, and that's also not what polls show over here. What's religious? Religious by what metrics?
You ask them if they're religious, they say no.
They don't. Then you shouldn't be asking them if they're religious. Do you mean they believe in God? Do they believe in the God of the Bible? Are they traditional? Because you get very different answers for that. I don't think.
The question is meaningless. The question is meaningless because we all know that everybody is religious. You should ask questions to what kind of flavor the religion they are, whether they're Marxist or whether they are Muslim or
yes, many of them their religion is Marxism.
Not so many anymore.
Okay, for a lot of them, their religion is Friday night clubbing in Tel Aviv.
Yeah. And for some, it will be capitalism.
What's wrong with that, Jacob?
But here's the thing. I think you're all on mute now. So here's the thing. earlier, Chazi, or it was a Chazi or Yoav. You're talking about cleaning your room, and you said, and that like Israel needs to clean its room first. I think it was Yoav, right? Before, and then Chazi kind of agreed and said, yeah, we have to like get, internal stuff straightened out before you can do the external. In many ways, American Jews are not. We're not cleaning the room in Israel. That's not our room in some sense, in a very real sense, especially with this crazy level of scandal that's going on right now with this, and the Supreme Court stuff and the reforms and Bibi. Like, I mean, not only am I really like literally, I'm like, because I'm not a citizen, but I'm also like not. It's not my conversation. Like I can weigh in, I can like pay attention, but like it is not my room to clean. And if we wait for Israel to sort out all its problems and clean its room, then we're not going to have this other conversation that has to happen around American Jews or world kind of whatever, and anti-Semitism and like all those other stuff, or internet anti-Semitism, whatever container we want to talk about. I don't think we can wait for Israel to like figure out, everything and then have that conversation. Like we're living in the middle of it now, and this Chazi's point, like, and that wasn't the point he was trying to make, but it's the point he made. Like, I find myself in this moment where I live, dealing with the things that I care about, and like, yeah, and that's like that has a conversation and a relevance that is unique to this situation that is not fully dependent on what's going on in Israel. And like, I know you have like, you got tired of me like talking too much in the beginning about like the details of like refuting X. But to me, like this conversation about like what's going on in Israel, like at this resolution, has very little bearing on like the conversation about anti-Semitism either. Like we're so down in the weeds, and this is not what we need to be talking about, because this isn't what like that conversation has to do. Like even insofar as that conversation has anything to do with Zionism, it really just has to do with, mostly not even just like the average Jew in America, but like Jews that have power or money in America, and how they're using that, in any meaningful way that is aligned with Israel's interests, insofar as Israel's interest is not aligned with the United States. Because if they have the same interests, then there's not a question. It's the real, insofar as Zionism matters here, it's only like, hey, there is a misalignment, is like one contention. The other one is, well, there is alignment, but only because Jews have influenced it, so there'd be alignment. It's a false alignment, because like Jews as citizens of this country shouldn't have influence or voice, like whatever, at some level, any more than anyone else. Sorry, they shouldn't have any influence. They should have less of an influence or voice than other groups that are more representative of the Christian European.
So I support the United States giving Ukraine money, despite the fact that if I were Ukrainian, I would not be happy about it, because I think that we're sending money and letting Ukrainian young men die instead of American young men, to give Putin a bloody nose. And I have a very similar opinion about the United States giving money so that Israeli young men die fighting with Iran and with Saudi Arabia's other foes, rather than Americans. That's not the anti-Semitic narrative about why if it's Israelis who are dying for America, not the other way around, as far as I am concerned, which is why I support it. Because as far as I am concerned, the American soldier is my soldier, and the Israeli soldier is somebody else's soldier.
If people do not understand what you're talking about, look at what happened with Yemen. Yemen has been an international criminal in stopping shipment, everybody's shipment on an important shipping route, and infecting the economy of everybody. So the Americans said, well, we are strong, we have a big navy, we're going to deal with this Yemen. And they blundered. And the Saudis, the well-equipped, rich Saudis next door, tried to deal with the Yemen and failed miserably. And it took Israeli soldiers to basically solve the situation. You don't hear of Yemen for many months now. Of course, it's not a solved problem because nothing in the Middle East will ever be solved forever, but there is some quiet for some months. And luckily, it was achieved without Israeli soldiers dying, which is part of doing the job well and not blundering. And yes, this is why the USA, with all its strength, does need Israel. But this was just to explain what you were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely examples. Yemen's complicated. It is in the news because it's about to split, it looks like, into two.
Yemen had split before I was born.
No. Now, not the Houthis. The other part of Yemen, the other two armies have been fighting. The civil war the past 5 weeks or so has been insane, and it's very quick. And it looks like they're about to declare a South Arabian country, or South Yemen, for the first time in 30 years. But whenever they had their unification, that was 91, I think, 92.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know about it at all, but it sounds very familiar in the Middle East. Yes.
Yep. So
there
are other things distracting the Houthis right now. That's for sure. Though Israel does get some credit for sure. I'm not saying it doesn't get credit, and it did it. Something that America, was happy to let a proxy do. I'd also say America's use of Israel within Azerbaijan's conflict is similar, and Trump has used that to tout a major, I'd say, strategic victory. And it's hard to say that that has very little, I think, to do with Americans being American Zionists having influence on the Trump administration here. Like, there are clearly shared global strategic interests still that the countries have. The narrative probably around that is changing as far as one democracy in the Middle East type of narrative. It's not the interests of a number of people to kind of stress that narrative at the moment, but there'll be a new narrative, and that's sort of, and whatever the narrative is, there are shared interests, regardless of how it's framed.
I would challenge what Jacob said about the American soldiers are my soldiers and the Israeli soldiers are other soldiers. I would say Nick Fuentes would say, no, they're Jewish soldiers, and that's why you care about them still, like you wouldn't care about Chinese soldiers. It doesn't matter that they're not from your state. And would you refute that? Do you not care about the Jews that are dying as soldiers? Of course you do.
As Jews, just like I care about the Jews in Ukraine who are dying.
Great.
And look, I care about any human being. Dying is bad, but Israeli soldiers, qua Israeli, are not my soldiers.
I understand.
American soldiers, qua American, are my soldiers.
But okay, understood. Now, is your affinity closer? I know they're not your soldiers. The soldiers, Jewish soldiers, Israeli soldiers that are going in and proclaiming the Shema before they go in, does that mean anything more to you than any other soldier?
I don't believe in religious wars. I don't believe that.
And nothing to do with not a religious war. Not a religious war.
No, saying Shema and going into war is a contradiction.
One second. Let's say let's say it was not a religious war. It's an American soldier that's Jewish that's saying the Shema because he wants to be protected. Is that strange to do?
God bless America. You're mixing up very different things.
I know you're just separating things, which I don't think you could separate. Like you did this nice little clean thing, which is like, these are Israeli soldiers and these are American soldiers. The problem is they're Jewish. And that goes back to the idea, what are Jews, right?
Okay, so Christians have the exact same dilemma.
Do they?
Yes, they do.
So I would say the
religious
argument,
Christians, certainly.
I'm with you. I would say the argument that anti-Semites have, right? For example,
I don't agree with the anti-Semites.
But our conversation over here is why a Benjamin Boyce could come and say you should know your place, right? You don't know your place because you don't only look at nationalities, you're also looking at who are my Jewish people, because there is world Jewry and we do care about the Jews. Unlike other groups that walk around in this earth.
That's not true.
Okay, you're right. It's not true.
Christians,
by the way,
Christians care about other Christians. Muslims care about other Muslims. Hindus
right, so
care about other Hindus.
So great. So you could help us in this conversation. What is the fixation about the Jews?
Yes, there is a fixation about the Jews.
Why?
That's important. And Zionists stoking that is part of my problem with Zionism.
It's not really a problem. What you're saying more than that is like really Zionism is the cause of Jews' death. October 7th.
I do think Zionism has definitely caused Jews to die. Yes.
Great. So then no problem. Then you are agreeing in that sense with Nix Fuentes, which saying like the Jewish state is sucking money away from America, having people killed, killing itself, and it should be obviously you don't want Jews to die, but ideally completely taken over and becoming a secular state, and it should be pressured, and we should have embargoes.
I didn't say any of that.
But how else are we going to make sure we don't want to have these religious wars, and we don't believe in this democratic national state they have over here, and you're America first, so like you got to get rid of this problem.
I don't. The world has lots of problems, including Iran. I don't think the United States needs to get rid of all the world's problems. We have our own problems. Thank you very much.
I know, but part of that problem is the influence of this problematic Jew already in our culture and in our society and in our government.
No, I don't believe any of that is true. I disagree with the anti-Semites.
I don't know. It sounds like you're saying that Israel's causing death. Israel's a problem, and if Israel's a problem, no shekel should go to it because it shouldn't exist.
No, I said very clearly, America should be supporting Israel fighting our wars for us.
Allowing these, I'm saying because of its proxy, we should allow these soldiers, right, to be killed because it benefits us.
We are. That is de facto what America has done for the last 70 years. Israel has been the United States cat's paw in the Middle East. And yes, Jewish young men and women are dying to fight America's wars in the Middle East. Yes, that is how I view it.
All right. So obviously then we should see like what makes the most sense to fight our wars in the Middle East. And if we can, we should just dilute anything we're sending to the States. Also, more than that, if you're against those wars, obviously we don't want things like AIPAC or things like that influencing any of those decisions because it should be America first, not have any of the interests of Israel.
AIPAC is mostly funded by American Christians, and it's almost exclusively American Jews.
Right, but we don't want that influence though on us.
Why?
I don't want any Jewish religious double loyalty having to do with Israel because Israel's a mistake.
Okay,
it happens to be working for us right now.
Chezi, apparently you're not listening to anything I'm saying.
I'm trying to.
No, you are straw manning me left and right.
I don't think I am.
Yosef?
Yeah, I mean, I think you are, Chezi, actually. Because you're overstating his position. You know, his position can be that it is useful and aligned with American interests to use Israel as a proxy. As an American citizen, you can recognize that. But even for Americans to be Zionists, whether they're Christian or Jews, like they are Americans and allowed to have some amount of political influence.
But in Jacob's frame, there is no Zionism, right? Like that's gobbledygook. We want to get rid of that. So I'm saying like in his interest as an American, right, we should stomp out that bad idea.
I tell dispensationalists, just like I tell Jews, that the idea that the modern state of Israel is some sort of God sent something is ridiculous
and dangerous.
Yes.
Right. So am I strawmanning him, Yosef? It's a dangerous.
I think there's something to separate here, right? Which is Jacob can tell people it's gobbledygook all he wants, but I think he also, and Jacob, correct me here, but I think you also want people to have the right to believe in gobbledygook who are American citizens and use that to, they have the freedom to use that to use their money and their votes.
Yeah.
I don't think you want to limit that in any meaningful way.
One second. I'm assuming Jacob would want. Yeah, you're right. Everyone has the freedom of speech and association, but Jacob would not want his tax dollars going to the dangerous mistake of Israel.
Again, you didn't listen to a word I said.
How did I not listen?
I very
rather give money to Israel.
said the opposite.
Yeah, he'd rather give money to Israel to fight America's wars, so we don't spend our money on it or our lives on it.
Sure.
Our lives on it. Yeah.
I understand you're using it. Okay, so now that the state of Israel exists, right? I don't mind using it. However, because ideally you don't want that state to exist.
Because you were the one who says we have to deal with what's in front of us. You were the one who made that argument from Yosef.
I'm with you. My question is, but dealing with what's in front of us, someone could come and argue the way of dealing with it is BDS, boycott it, bring it down.
I am not pro Hamas. I am not pro Iran. And I think Israel is very convenient to fight America's wars.
Right, but now those wars are taken care of right now. And now America comes and says, okay, now we want to be America first, which I totally get that, right? Now that we don't have these wars. When it's America first, are you, Jacob, interested in any Zionistic voice in government? The answer, I think, is no.
Zionistic voice? No. I've never been interested in, not since I gave up on Zionism. I am not interested in Zionistic voices. I am not a Zionist.
Chezi, this is also never you're presenting a theoretical that doesn't have meaning because, unless America goes into full isolationist mode and completely gives up on any world stuff, and whether we're talking we're not going to police the waves anymore, we're not going to care about, we don't need Middle Eastern oil, we're not going to we're going to let the Chinese just have whatever they want. And you're saying we're going to give up all our global aspirations, everything in that world, then where America doesn't want to project power at all in any sense or form. In that world,
Israel, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, the United Kingdom, Ukraine, all of these are very valuable allies to the United States.
Great. I'm discussing this in the context of someone like a Nick Fuentes, right? Or those people who are coming and saying, I have a problem with the Jews. And the problem they have with the Jews is their influence and their and the Zionism aspect as well, which you as well have an issue with.
I have an issue with the Zionist part. I don't have a problem with the Jews.
He doesn't have a problem with the influence.
Great.
Part. That's the difference. And that's a big difference.
But he does have a problem with the influence because any influence that promulgates not the Jewish state, the Zionistic state, Jacob is against. He, of course, is pro protecting Jews.
This is where you can't seem to hear what I'm saying.
Okay. Please reiterate.
I am America first. That doesn't mean I want to destroy America in order to the Commentary magazine actually had a Palestine first edition. Right? Because people like this guy, Deja Vu You here, right? He hates the Jews so much, he's willing to destroy the United States just to hate the Jews. I don't hate the Jews. I don't hate the Israelis either. Even the ones who are Jewish.
I know you don't hate the Israelis, and I know you don't hate Jews. I'm asking you now, then, to argue with Nick Fuentes, right, about the influence that We don't have an issue with the Jews. I know Jews are good. Do you want Jewish influence in America? Jewish influence means their theology, their politics, how it relates to Israel.
As relates to Israel, I don't see how Jewish theology relates to the modern state of Israel.
You don't see how Jewish theology relates to the modern
state?
No, you don't
I
so?
don't. That's been the entire discussion we've had for years now.
Do you think evangelicals don't connect the theology?
I think dispensationalism, Christian dispensationalism, the people who are so silly that they open up their Bible, they see the word Israel, they open up their globe, they see the word Israel, they automatically connect the two. These people are not intelligent people.
Okay. So again, sorry, go ahead, please.
I wouldn't go that far, but one, I need to go because I would like to be able to wake up for Shachrit in the morning. And it's really late here. Two, I think we like there's both of you are sort of like kind of off the mark from my position at the moment, because yes, Jacob, I understand in your understanding of Jewish theology, like about the modern state of Israel is not relevant. On the other hand, like you certainly acknowledge that in a lot of other Jewish theologies that exist, the modern state of Israel plays a significant role across different denominations, and even for like people who aren't of any denomination but still kind of see something sort of spiritual about it in some weird way that I don't quite understand. So like there's that like part. We have to like honestly acknowledge that's like a thing, and it's not just like stupid low intellect people. And I don't even think that's true, certainly not true of evangelicals either, who make that connection. Like there are real serious theologies that have this connection that like have to be dealt with and not just kind of dismissed. And whether this conversation could be the place for that is a different, we can talk about. I understand, Chazi, that you're frustrated because you would like to hear Jacob's basically like point by point critique of Nick Fuentes and where he differs from him. He's sort of tried to do that to some degree, but I think you keep trying to put it back in like theology frames, and that like Fuentes is not working from a theology frame. He's never going to work in a theology frame. I mean, I know he's Catholic. Nothing that he's shown us, though, in his public personas discussing these issues have really put it in a theology perspective from what I've seen. And not that I've watched like anywhere near the majority of his content, but I've seen a number of his long form pieces, his own show, his interviews. He just doesn't engage in that world. At the same time, I would like to remind you both that even Benjamin Boyce like would, I think, agree to some extent with like Jacob here, that like, he does not want to destroy America for like no matter how far he like, at least at this point in his going down the rabbit hole of stuff, like he said himself that like he does not want to bring down the world economy and like America's role in maintaining that, because like that would be awful for everybody. And like even he is interested in a very, very slow, like if I know he's a Spangler guy at the moment, like he doesn't want America like to just collapse suddenly and like at the cost of whatever ideals he might have or like weird conspiracy theories he has. Like he wants to maintain the economic system as much as like I would say the richest Jewish elite from whatever imagined place like he can imagine, to like anyone on the street basically who isn't like a committed DSA or anarchist like type, right? So I don't think the conversation is about like that level of cutting Jews out of the conversation or destroying America for the sake of some like weird messianic or idealistic value. Like I think those are like straw man's in many ways. Like that's not what we're talking about here. And with that, it's like 2:00 in the morning. I'm gonna go so I can get some sleep before Shabbos. You guys don't kill each other. Yoav, maybe I don't know. I know you're walking around, but
to be continued.
Yeah, nice shirt by the way, Yoav. I noticed you picked an interesting one for this conversation.
I would like to conclude by performatively, we have refuted the anti-Semites There isn't such thing as the Jews. We cannot even jointly draft a statement against the people who hate us. People should notice that, those people who notice.
Yehi Medinat Israel. Jacob, will this to be continued? I just with what Yosef said, I disagree because I ultimately believe that there's like an undergirding theological thing under a lot of these things. I could understand that people, say like, that's not what the focus is. I would disagree. I think that's like subconsciously on everyone's mind. But again, of course, I could be wrong about that. Just to be clear, if anyone was watching this and misunderstood what I was saying, I know Jacob loves Jews. I don't think Jacob supports Hamas. I think Jacob wants the best for all mankind. And in no way did I mean to say that he's happy or looking forward to the demise of Israel. So just to clarify that. Have a great day, all of you. We'll catch you guys later.
I'm going to use host's prerogative to put the Reverend Parcells to bed because he does need to get up in the morning.
Sorry, Reverend. Thank you.
But before he goes, I have a question. Let's say, God forbid, that I were to burn somebody at the stake for not being a Trinitarian. And I did not repent of that. Is that a salvation issue?
Sometimes Jacob takes that devil's advocate thing too
Isn't there
far.
a proverb that says something like, don't answer a fool according to his folly?
But there's a proverb that says, answer a fool according to his folly.
There is. Exactly right. And I'm going to leave it to you guys to determine, which of those was applicable in this situation as I go. So, but anyhow, good.
Thank you, Reverend.
Good to
Thank
chat
you.
with you all.
Thank you.
Good night.
The